What would it feel like to be truly, deeply happy, regardless of your circumstances? Did you know that happiness is a choice and not a result? That you can create your life on purpose? Join us now to learn more. This is the Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. And here's your host, mindset coach, and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott.
Hello and welcome to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, and today we are talking about Unleash Your Inner Powerhouse. So the show is actually called Empower You, Unleash Your Inner Powerhouse. How does it get better than that? Can you even just like feel that just for a second? Doesn't it feel just yummy and strong and powerful and stuff? Doesn't it just feel wonderful? Yes. So that is our topic for today. We're going to be talking about tapping into your personal power and using radical personal responsibility to shift your thinking from victim to champion. From victim to champion. Yay. Okay, so on Time to Rise and Thrive, we talk about our subliminal soundtrack. I'll give you a brief description of that in just a minute. But we talk about getting it to work for us rather than against us. We talk about recognizing and seeing our own unique value, our own unique beauty, and the contribution that we are to the world. Because once you actually get into a space where you really start to understand that, I promise you, everything in your life will change. Your relationships will change. The choices you make will change. The opportunities that you allow yourself to be available for, all of it changes once you get a handle on that. So, we're going to be talking more about that as we go through the show. So, here's our show description for today. Does your mindset hold you back or does it empower you? When you always look for someone else to blame or refuse to look at what you're doing that may be part of the problem, you're actually disempowering yourself. So, exactly the opposite kind of space that we would like to occupy, most of us anyway. So, we disempower ourselves when you practice radical personal responsibility. And I've talked about that on the show a number of times, but we're also going to go through what does that really mean. When you practice that, you can change your thoughts. Yes, you can. You can change your feelings. Yes, you can. And your actions. And that is where your power comes from. The very best way to empower yourself is to look at what's happening and how you're contributing to the situation, both positively and negatively, and make different choices about how you feel, how to act and react in those circumstances. So you can start to create dynamics that are actually healthy and circumstances that will serve you. Doesn't this just like, isn't that just what everybody would like? Well, no, I suppose it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. But the people that I want in my world, this is what we want. We want to be operating from a space of creating our lives and bringing in peace and joy and love and opportunity and wealth and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm going to share with you as we go through our show, I'm going to share with you how we can start to tap into the stuff that will have those doors opening for us without even a lot of effort. It's crazy how amazing this stuff is. So, let's talk about subliminal soundtrack just so you understand where we're coming from here. Subliminal soundtrack is this loop of messages that plays in the back of our mind all day, every day. It is made up of all of these little bits of information that we have grabbed over the course of our lifetime. We've picked these things up from every conversation we've ever had, every relationship we've ever been part of, every experience that has ever occurred for us has given us little bits of information. And those have gotten stored there on our subliminal soundtrack. We then use that information to help us create our belief systems about ourselves, about the world in general, about what it means to have or be almost anything. So these belief systems actually will cause us to behave in certain ways. They'll cause us to have certain expectations of ourselves or those around us or opportunities or whatever. It really does impact every single area of your life. Every single area of your life. Because here's the really fascinating thing. The average person has between 60 and 80,000 thoughts go through their mind in a day. 60 to 80,000. So when I did the math on that, that works out to about 2,500 per hour and roughly 50 per minute. I don't know about you, but and I have to say I'm a pretty smart person. I still cannot follow 50 thoughts going through my head in a minute. It's really kind of a crazy number. And what that tells us is that most of that is happening in the back of our mind, back where we're probably not even aware of it. So this is why it's so very important for us to get clear on what that stuff is, because it will impact every part of our lives. The truth of the matter is this: what you believe to be true will be true for you, even if it's based on completely incorrect information. Completely incorrect information. So we come at this thing from this space of understanding. It's about conditioning, it's about training, it's about what happened that caused us to think a certain way about a situation or be a certain way in a situation, perceive ourselves. And that is the really dangerous place. That is the really dangerous place when we perceive ourselves from a space of value and contribution and almost pride, like own who you are. Pick that up, own it, hold it close to you, get rock solid on who am I and what do I bring to the table. That's the part that is often causing us to do things or to, create relationships, create circumstances that fulfill whatever that limiting belief is. So I talk about this sometimes where I say, okay, so if my mom told me throughout my entire childhood and into my adult years that February is the hardest month of the year to get through, you'd better believe that a part of me is going to start bracing in January, but probably mid-January. I'm going to be bracing for February because I know that February is the hardest part of the year, the hardest month of the year. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's that conditioning, and it may not even be true. Like it's also the shortest month of the year, right? Any number of things are true. And what we give our energy to is the thing that is going to kind of make us or break us sometimes. So we're gonna dig into this, but hear me on this one. If you believe that other people always treat you poorly, that you have no control over anything, or that you simply have to go along with, like, go with the flow, don't rock the boat, all of that kind of stuff, that will actually perpetuate exactly those things and exactly those circumstances to come into your world. You'll create them. Believe it or not, you are a powerful being and you will create the circumstances and call in those relationships that will actually help you get stuck in exactly the same space that you really don't want to be in. Okay. But if you believe that you deserve to be treated with respect and consideration, that what you bring to the table is valuable, and that you can and will face up to whatever is necessary to deal with conflict or trouble or problems or whatever the case may be, you will stand up for yourself whenever it's necessary, and you will actually create less trauma, drama, and stress for yourself. You'll treat yourself with respect and consideration. Isn't that wonderful? So that's the thing, guys. We can stay in a place where we're, hopeless and helpless, and it's all everybody else's fault, or we can choose to use this radical personal responsibility thing to turn the entire thing around. Entire thing around. It's about owning what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're feeling, all of it. It's about taking responsibility, because when we take responsibility, we can actually start to change things. We can actually start to change things. Okay. So today we're going to talk about this idea of victim versus champion. So I say it on the show all the time. Pain in this lifetime is absolutely inevitable, but suffering is optional. Okay. We can choose to suffer. And I'm sure, I don't know whether you're the person, but you probably know somebody. You probably know somebody who's always, woe is me. Life is so hard. Nothing ever goes my way. And what happens with those people? they continue to find the people and the circumstances that make exactly that woe is me place true for them, right? They continue to do that. But when you own that responsibility, when you start to say, okay, you know what, maybe I screwed up here. And not from a place of judgment or beating yourself up, from a place of like analysis, from a place of like, hmm, that's interesting. When we start to actually look at it and be honest with ourselves, then we say, okay, so that probably wasn't the right move or the right thing to say, or how if I'd handled it this way, maybe it would have been better or easier or whatever the case may be. So that's what we're talking about. The victim is the person who goes, everything's so hard and everything is someone else's fault. And, the one thing that I'm going to say about this, because I just popped into my head and I need to say it, the one common denominator in those people's lives is them. Okay. So when it's always someone else's fault, sometimes the only person who is really responsible is the person in the mirror. I know that's a hard truth, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be so blunt and so honest, but I'm not going to help you if I pussyfoot around shit and don't say it true. So the truth of the matter is that sometimes when a person is stuck in this victim mode where it's always someone else's fault, the person who's really at fault or responsible for the situation is the person in the mirror. Okay? I know it's harsh. I'm sorry. I'm going to give you some time to chew on that. And when you're ready, we can shift that whole bloody thing. We can turn it all around and make it into a situation where we are empowered. We are functioning from our place of like, what else is possible here? What can I do here? What do I want? What do I want? What do I really desire here? Okay. All of that stuff gets rolled into this. This is where it gets really yummy and juicy. So stick with me here. So, radical personal responsibility, what does that mean? We've already talked a little bit about that, but it basically means that we own our shit. We own whatever we are bringing to the table here. If somebody comes to me, like you don't have to engage in every argument you're invited to. Truth. Okay. So, somebody comes to me with a chip on their shoulder or an attitude or nasty words or whatever the case may be. I don't have to engage with them. I don't have to engage with them at all. I can choose to, or I can react and put myself in a position where uh, now I've stuck my foot in my mouth, or now I've pushed a button that maybe wasn't a kind button to push, or any number of other things. Okay, so that's the place where you're like, that wasn't so smart, or that wasn't so kind, or whatever it is. That is your radical personal responsibility. Own your part, good and bad, right? Good and bad. Own your part. And then when you find that it's creating something unpleasant or unhealthy dynamics or whatever the case may be, owning your part gives you the power to do something about it. As long as a person is behaving from a place of victimhood, there's nothing they can do to change their circumstances because their circumstances in their belief are completely outside of their control. So it's my boss's fault, it's my spouse's fault, it's my kid's fault, it's my friend, whomever, or it's the government's fault. Or I get we've all heard these stories. We all know people who have these sort of dialogues that they just keep playing into. Do you see what I'm saying? So that is, there's nothing you can do. If it's the government's fault, what am I going to do about it? If it's my spouse's fault, well, what am I going to do about it? Right? If it's my whatever, what are you going to do about it? Nothing, because you can't change what someone else's does. You cannot change someone else's actions. The only thing we have control over is who we choose to be and how we act under any given circumstances. That is the only control that we have in this life. And if you think there's any other stuff, just, yeah, maybe this show's not for you. Okay. So, one of the things I wanted to touch on before we head to our first break here is that we treat people how to teach us, or we teach people how to treat us. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a bit whipped today. We teach people how to treat us. I think that Oprah Winfrey was the first person I ever heard say that. And it's fascinated me. It's absolutely fascinated me. So we set the tone for our relationships right from the beginning. And that's the piece of that that's important to remember. So if we approach a relationship from a place of feeling unworthy or undeserving or unlovable or not pretty or fat or like any of those, if we approach our relationship from a place of that negative, undeserving energy, then we will allow the dynamics right from the beginning. We will allow a person to mistreat us right from the beginning. We will allow abuse right from the beginning. Do you see what I'm saying? It is very important. It's very important to develop this rock solid foundation where you know who you are, you know your value, you know what you bring to the table, because then you will not allow those things to happen. Because here's the thing, we come to a point sometimes in our lives where we've learned more, we've grown, we've developed these ideas about who we be, and we have these relationships that already have these crazy dynamics. It is much, much more difficult to change a dynamic that's already been in play for a long time than it is to start right from the beginning with the healthy boundaries, and this is what I will allow and this is what I will not. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is so important for us to develop that rock solid foundation of who we know ourselves to be, because that will influence how we allow other people to treat us, the circumstances and situations that we will allow ourselves to become part of, all of it. Okay. So we're going to get into more of that as we go through the show, but we're going to head to our first break now. So you are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. And today we are talking about tapping into our personal power and using radical personal responsibility to shift your thinking from victim to champion. So we're going to be back in just a moment. Stick with us.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, and today we are talking about tapping into your personal power using radical personal responsibility to shift your thinking from victim to champion. Now, before we get into the next segment, I would really like to share with you something that Christine, our leader or chief crazy person on Inspired Choices, she is very, very, very excited about this, and I'm also excited, but I don't really understand it that well. So there is now an app for your phone. I know that it's available I'm not quite sure how to use it. I've got to practice a little bit more. It's not that hard though. And like I'm not all that great with the technology. So if I can figure it out, I'm sure you can too. So you go and you download this app and you can actually listen to us right from your phone no matter where you are. So yay, how wonderful is that? So if you've got a host on Inspired Choices Network that you really enjoy listening to or watching or whatever the case may be, hopefully one of them is me. I'm just saying. But if you have a host that you really enjoy spending time with, or that you would like to listen to their replay, maybe while you're walking or working out or doing your laundry or dishes, like whatever, like whatever works for you. So yeah, go to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com and download that app, and then I think there's a video too that sort of directs you on what to do. But it's exciting. This is very exciting. She's always doing stuff. She's always doing crazy stuff that, is meant to help us move forward. So those of us who are a little bit technologically challenged, we love her and sometimes. Oh, okay. She says yes, download from the App Store. There you go. So you can find us on the App Store. Awesome, right? Go and download it, play with it. You'll find it. It's not hard at all. And take us with throw us in your pocket with you when you go for a walk. How's that? I am telling you, it is the last day of tax season, guys. I am so tired and I'm probably going to be kind of silly. So back to serious. We got some important stuff to talk about here. So today, again, we're talking about tapping into your personal power and using radical personal responsibility to help you shift your thinking from victim to champion. Just the way it feels when I say those words in my body, like I can feel my shoulders, I can feel the strength there. It's play with your words and see what you can do. Shift your energy. Okay, so what I want us to touch on right now is the difference between action and reaction. And in my humble opinion, that is one of the huge differences between the victim and the champion. So when we are in a space of reaction, we are coming at the situation from an emotional place. We are coming at it from a place often of hurt or anger or sad or confused or whatever the case may be, frustrated, whatever it is. But we come at these situations from those places. That's when we react. Um, there's also potential. Like this is where when we start to talk about things like toxicity and abuse, this is where this stuff gets really kind of dicey, because what happens is, like anything else, like any other animal on the planet, if you go at an animal in the wrong way or enough times, or you cause it harm or you scare it or whatever the case may be, that animal is going to turn and react and you can get hurt. And it's the same thing with people. It is never okay for us to put our hands on other people in a violent manner. It is never okay for us to treat people in a way that is deliberately meant to be harmful to them. It's never okay. I want to be clear about that. And if we know that we are pushing someone's buttons, that we are causing them pain or frustration and we keep doing it, it's like poking the bear with a stick. If that person then reacts and something happens, it's absolutely their responsibility. But my darling, you have some responsibility in that too, because you're the one who picked up the stick and started poking. Okay. So it is not okay for a person to be abusive or cruel. It is not okay. And you need to own if you are a person who's picked up a stick and poked, because that, my friend, is your part of the responsibility. And we've all done it. We've all done it. So I'm fortunate enough to be the youngest of four kids. And I have an older brother who is 8 years older than me. So when we were growing up, there was a vast difference between a teenage boy and a, 5-year-old girl, right? Vast size difference. So here's how I learned that particular lesson. I would just being a little kid, just being a little kid, I would bug. I'm the little sister. I would bug. And that's a perfectly normal thing to happen. But eventually my brother would get fed up, and then maybe I'd get hit or yelled at or kicked or something like that would happen. And where I feel very blessed was that when I would go crying to, the adults who were supervising, my grandmother, my mother, whomever it was, um, there was always the question. There was always the question, and what did you do before he hit you? And then I would have to think about that and go, oh, well, I wouldn't leave him alone. And he's trying to watch a show. And I just kept on talking and talking and talking. Or maybe I was physically poking at him or whatever it was. Right. And so it was beautiful because that was okay. Yes, he was wrong for doing that. And you shouldn't do that either. If you're going to do that, you know that that's the reaction you're going to get. So wonderful, because there was an opportunity to learn this idea of personal responsibility from the time I was very, very small. So if you don't want to be hit or yelled at or kicked by your older brother, don't bug him. Don't bug him. And he would get consequenced, but it was also, again, it was also an opportunity for me to learn about boundaries and what is okay from this standpoint. I have so many thoughts and opinions on this because, I'm a mom and raised my son in a time when things were changing. Things were vastly different from when I was young, and people handled things very differently. And so I have lots and lots of opinions on this, but I will tell you that I appreciate people who teach their children what my family taught me. You have some responsibility in this situation. So if you don't want this result, then you need to know not to do that thing. Okay? And it carries on through adulthood. It carries on into adulthood. Okay. Don't be responsible for other people though. That's the one thing with this radical personal responsibility. We have to be careful of not taking on the other person's responsibility. So we don't make it our fault that something happened, but we recognize that maybe if we had done something differently, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have come. What's the word? The situation might have ended differently than it did. All right. So that is when we are coming from this victim mindset. But when we come from this champion mindset, and I really love that. I really love those words put together. When we come from this champion mindset, then we are actually being proactive. We are acting from a place of thoughtfulness. We are acting from a place of how can we all get what we need? How can we create something that will get the job done? In a workplace, for example, how can we make this thing happen so that everybody comes together and works together and gets the job done? All of that kind of stuff. We're focused more on the solution than on the problem. And it's very important to have good, clear, respectful communication. So if you just, and I know all of us have probably faced certain things. If you just think about a moment, just for a moment, a situation where you felt like it didn't matter what you did, you just couldn't win. You felt like, oh my God, what was on the other side of that? Because sometimes this space of the victimhood, there is like a sabotaging, gossipy kind of energy that can go along with that. We're not helping ourselves. You know, when we take the emotion out of it and we say, okay, this is the fact of what happened. Like these are the facts. This is what led up to it, all of that kind of stuff. When it's information as opposed to you broke my heart or you betrayed me or how dare you or whatever the case may be, right? So we get focused on the solution. The purpose of this thing is to create healthy dynamics that work for everyone involved. And I'm just going to say this last thing before we head to our next break. The blame game, that blame game, it's his fault, it's her fault, it's their fault, completely disempowers you. It completely disempowers you because it keeps you in the energy of being a victim uh, at someone else's mercy. Do you see what I'm saying? It's very important, again, to separate the emotion from the facts. And when it's just a thing, when it's just a thing, it doesn't have the power. It doesn't have power over us. When we're still mired in the emotions, that situation, those people, it will have power over us. So it's important for us to get the emotion out of it so we're not coming at it from this place of disempowerment and emotion. And then we can start to put a plan in place. And I forgot to tell you in our next segment, which is going to be coming up in just a moment, I do have some information, some sort of like steps or tips on how to go about doing this. So while we're on our break, make sure that you grab yourself a pen and paper. And on that note, I'm going to take us to our next break. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. And when we come back, we are going to continue this conversation about tapping into your personal power and using radical personal responsibility to shift from victim to champion. So stick with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Our subliminal soundtrack plays in the back of our minds 24/7. It's filled with everything we've ever learned about money, relationships, body, and sexuality, about every single aspect of our lives. If you don't have what you desire, the Subliminal Soundtrack Reset program may be the very key to changing it all. In this 8-week program, designed by Jackie Mott, you'll learn to replace messages that stop your desires with new ones that not only support you in creating what you truly desire, but expand your life to higher levels of joy and pleasure. Go to phoenixcoach.ca today to sign up and begin creating your life on purpose.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, and now is the time. So I hope you've already got your pen and paper. If not, I would encourage you to grab it right now. We are going to walk through an exercise that will help you to get into that space of personal responsibility and get into that power place. And that's a place where you can start to shift any and all circumstances, relationships, jobs, like everything. So the first thing that we're going to do before we get into that, though, is I'm going to share with you some information about what's going on in my world. And as I said, today is our last day of tax season here in Canada. It's been kind of crazy. I'm a little bit pooped. And that is why next week's show is going to be about allowing yourself to rest and take care of yourself. Just one second. I'm sorry. I've got a cough. I'm sorry about that, guys. Tickling my throat. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, and with the new app, there's a contest. There's a contest for all of the hosts have sort of thrown some yummy goodies into a bag, and I don't know all of the details again, but to find out how to enter it, you'll find that on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Download the app for sure, and then there are clear instructions on what you need to do after that to put yourself into the contest, and maybe you will win something really, really yummy. I believe that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of like $13,000 in prizes. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's amazing what people do when they work together, right? Oop. And Christine says that there were over 75 gifts. There are now over 50 that are still remaining. So there is a lot of time for you to get your hands on something really yummy. So check out the website, download the app, do whatever it tells you to do. And we will, maybe you'll get a chance to talk with me. I don't know. We'll see. Somebody will. All right. So grab that pen and paper. Here we go. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here is your exercise. This is how we get into a space of radical personal responsibility. So, step one. Step one is, where are you allowing yourself to be mistreated? Now, very important that we're coming at this place from a space of information. What are the facts? Okay, so what are the circumstances? Who are the players involved? What are the facts of the situation? Okay. Define all of that, and that will help you get to a bit more clarity. A bit more clarity. Now, here's where we're gonna touch on the emotion stuff. Where are your boundaries being crossed? Where are your personal boundaries being crossed by that person or in that circumstance? Identify, is it a specific behavior? Is it a specific thing that they are saying or doing that is causing whatever this upheaval is for you? Um, on our mm, Subliminal Soundtrack Reset beta group, there was a lady who was talking about, in one segment, she was talking about this sort of dynamic that she has with a family member. I can't remember who it was, but a family member, and he's kind of crass. And this guy uh, talks about women as heifers. Yeah. Mm, mm-mm. So she was able to identify that that specific thing that he was saying was the trigger point. And then we get into, okay, is it that you are being triggered? It could be something that has nothing to do with you, and that's also an important thing to remember. But is it a trigger? Is it bringing up an emotional response because of something that has happened in our past that maybe was painful or scary or whatever the case may be? So is it a trigger point? Is that what's happening? Um, Very good question to ask is it deliberate? People say and do things sometimes without actually intending the harm that sometimes is caused. So it's very important for us to have an understanding about, was this action, was this thing that was said, whatever it is, was it done with deliberation? Did that person actually go out of their way to cause me a problem? Or was it something that simply happened in the heat of the moment? Was it something that maybe it was a complete accident? I'm telling you, I sometimes have a mouth that says things that, oh my Lord. I'll tell you one. It's funny. I'll tell you one that's funny. Okay. So I went to the Walmart with a girlfriend of mine years ago. We had recently moved into the home that I now live in. And we had to go over there looking for something. I don't even know what it was, but we found ourselves in one of the home aisles, with all of the, there's probably towels and kitchen stuff and whatever. And I was looking for the drain board thing. You put the rack on top of the drain board for your dishes. I was looking for one of those. So I'm looking around and I'm looking around. There's a man standing about 10 feet down the aisle, and I'm not paying any attention to him. Not really paying any attention to anything except these drain board thingies. And so I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm looking, and she says, "Oh, Jackie, do you need a rack too?" And I said, "No, actually, I've got a really nice rack." And you should have seen the man's face. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes things will pop out of someone's mouth without them really thinking about how it might sound on the other side of the conversation. And the intention was absolutely not to cause pain or harm or anything like that. It's simply a slip of the tongue. And then you go, oh my God, what did I just say? It happens to me all the time. Most of the time, it's really funny. Like most of the time, it is really, really funny. So it's important for us to really get clarity on, was this thing a deliberate thing or was it an accident? And it doesn't necessarily minimize the impact that that thing has on you, but when we are pulling it out of the emotional place, deliberate requires a different flavor than something that happened accidentally. Okay. If I swing my arm around and somebody is there and I don't realize it and I smack them without even having any idea that they're there, that's a completely thing. Yeah, it's a completely different thing than me walking up and purposely giving them a good smack. Right. This is what I'm talking about. Things can happen accidentally. And if they are, we really need to approach it from a different place than if we're dealing with a deliberate act that was meant to cause harm or difficulty for someone else. So, the next thing, so number 3, what do you need? What do you need for this to be a healthier dynamic for you? What do you need? So, this is a place where things can it can be tricky because there are certain people that we can sort of remove from our lives rather easily. There are certain people that we really can't. If it is a family member, for example, you may well have to see that family member at future family gatherings, and or maybe even worse, maybe it's somebody that you're really quite close to and you want to keep in your life, and they've done something that has hurt you terribly. Okay, identify who that person is, what role they play in your life, and is this somebody that you want to keep in your life? Is this someone that you believe you can create a strong and healthy dynamic with? Or is it someone that you just like, okay, what importance does the person or the situation have in your world? If it's a work situation, then that's a rather important role because it pays your bills, right? So all of that stuff, we're really just working on getting a clear sense of where we're at and what we're dealing with at this point in the game. Is it even possible for this to become a healthier relationship? There are certain people that it just would not matter what you did. It will not matter what you did. They will continue to do and behave and say the same sorts of things as they always have because it works for them. For whatever reason, it works for them. And when we get out of the judgment and the energy of emotion with this whole thing, um, then we can go, okay, well, it works for them, but it doesn't work for me. And it's really just that simple. Okay. So who are they? What is the value of holding on to the situation or the relationship? And is it even possible for this to become a healthier dynamic? 4, think back. Now, this is where it can get fun. Are you ready? Are you ready? Think back to a time when you have stood up for yourself or someone else. Because I would hazard a guess that at some point in our lives, every single one of us has done this. Okay. Think back to that time when you stood up for yourself or you stood up for someone else. And now I want you to really be in the energy of how did that feel? How did it feel? What did you do? What did you do? Did you stand up and come between two people? Did you say something? Did you handle it in a way that made you feel empowered? Did you handle it in a way that maybe it didn't make the situation any better at all? What could you have done differently? What did you do right? Okay. But get into that space of, mm, I've got this. I've got this. I've done it before. I know I've done it before and I can do it again. Okay. Honor yourself. Honoring yourself and the other people involved. That's the energy we're going for. The last step in this is really very simple. Create your plan and then implement it. There are times when, especially if it's in a business or work type of situation, maybe we need to call a meeting. Maybe we need to arrange everybody's schedules. Maybe there are factors that we have to consider in our process. Um, and it can take time to pull those things together sometimes. So make sure that you allow for the create and implement the time that is required to pull these things together. And then you want to handle yourself in a way that is, again, honoring of both you and anyone else. Okay. So when we come at this from a space of, okay, so here's where I'm at, and this is what I've identified is happening here, and I really need this thing to change. I really need this thing to change, and here's what I'm asking for from you. It is a very um it's a softer energy than when you go, okay, okay, oh, right? It's a softer space. And when we come at it from a place of respect for both ourselves and the other party, then we can have a conversation. Then we can have an actual healthy conversation. So create your plan and then implement it is our last step. So that brings us to our last break of the show. You're with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott. And when we come back, we are going to wrap up this conversation about tapping into your personal power and using radical personal responsibility to shift from victim mindset to champion mindset. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Our subliminal soundtrack plays in the back of our minds 24/7. It's filled with everything we've ever learned about money, relationships, body, and sexuality, about every single aspect of our lives. If you don't have what you desire, the Subliminal Soundtrack Reset program may be the very key to changing it all. In this 8-week program, designed by Jackie Mott, you'll learn to replace messages that stop your desires with new ones that not only support you in creating what you truly desire, but expand your life to higher levels of joy and pleasure. Go to phoenixcoach.ca today to sign up and begin creating your life on purpose.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to the final segment of today's show. You're with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network, and I'm your host, Jackie Mott. I am just looking outside because, man, we have the most blustery day that I have seen in a long time. It actually picked up my recycle bin and threw it across the patio, and there was garbage everywhere. So I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. My door is creaking, everything. It's just crazy out there. But it's also springtime. Yay, yay. We're going on summer. Nice weather is it. Well, today's not so nice, but for the most part, the nice weather is here. Yay, no more snow for a while. So today we are talking about this tapping into your personal power using radical personal responsibility to shift from victim mindset into champion mindset. It is a lovely place to be. It is a lovely place to be when you start to implement this stuff. And sometimes we need help getting there. Sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need someone that can, kick us in the butt or help us clear up our thoughts. It's happened. I'm so very blessed. I have an amazing tribe of people in my world, and I have people that I can go to if I find myself really confused, if I find myself in a place where I know that there's something that I should be doing here, but I just can't quite identify what it is. Whatever the circumstances are, I have people in my world that I can go to. I also work with coaches. I also have had counselors. So on and so forth. So it's very, very important for you to identify what you need and when you need support, because it's easy sometimes. It's so easy sometimes to kind of curl up in a ball and go, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And sometimes it's actually necessary. It's actually necessary because there's a whole process that we go through. So sometimes, and this is the hard one, sometimes the only option you have is to walk away, whether it's from a person, a relationship, a job, like whatever the circumstances are. Sometimes the only option that you have is to walk away. And I will ask you, if that ever comes to be your situation, please don't beat yourself up. Please don't carry it with you. So here's the healthy way to handle when it's necessary for us to walk away. The first thing that we need to do is grieve the loss, because whether it's a person, whether it's a financial situation, whether it's a job situation, whatever it is, anytime we experience a loss, we can trigger a grief response. So allow yourself to grieve. Very important. When we don't allow that stuff to sort of process and work through, it will get stuck. It will get stuck in our bodies. And that's when people get very, very sick. Very, very sick. Okay. So grieve. Then, as we are doing that grieving process, we work through whatever pain, guilt, shame that is a result of the loss, and we move forward. We become focused on, how do I get to the other side of this? What is it that I'm moving toward? Focus your attention there. We choose action rather than reaction. So it's not like we're walking out the door flipping whoever the bird on our way out, right? We are walking out the door with our head held high, respecting ourselves and the other parties. And you create the opportunity. This is the yummy part. We create the opportunity for something or someone new to come into our world that might actually be able to meet our needs. Isn't that exciting? But when we don't walk away, we then it will impact how we perceive ourselves. It can take you into that victim mentality, and we don't make space for something else that could make us happy. There's no right or wrong here, but you always have the choice. So if you're comfortable getting satisfaction from playing the victim role, have at her. If that's what you choose, I have no judgment. But if you would like something different, I've given you some information, and you can always contact me for more information or to find out how I work with people to help them to create these healthier dynamics in their life. So, the quote that I want to leave you with: when we practice radical personal responsibility, we own our part and do what's necessary to create healthy circumstances for ourselves. We face our problems with a clear head. We create healthy boundaries. We don't allow ourselves to be mistreated, and we treat ourselves with care and respect. Radical personal responsibility is a great game changer. Victim or champion, you get to choose. You get to choose, my friend. All right. So, thank you for being with me today. We'll be back next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 Mountain, and 10 Pacific. Next week's show, Christine doesn't know yet. It's called The Value of Rest. We're going to be talking about self-care, why it's so essential to show yourself or to allow yourself the time and space to recharge, and how slowing down can actually help you to speed up. So thank you so much for being with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. Don't forget to go and download the app and play around with that. I'm sure you'll have all kinds of fun. And you can find me on there. So if you forgot to grab your pen and paper, or if you were not in a position to write down some of those tips that I gave you, find the replay. Watch me again. It's fun. It's fun. All right. So thanks again for being with us today. I so enjoy, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention and your contribution to my world. So remember, until next week, it is your time to rise and thrive. Have a great week, and I will see you then.
Thank you for joining us for Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. Jackie Mott will return next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Have a fantastic week, and remember, it's your time to rise and thrive.